Good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. This morning, I'm joined by Malcom Cunningham, the new director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess the first thing is we just talked about your title, and now give people an idea of what that title means.
Gotcha. What it means is that I'll be working with community partners, with public safety, with all of the right stakeholders to ensure that we can create safe spaces for our community within the neighborhoods that are most at risk for gun violence. Bringing together all those different stakeholders, whether they're within a health system-based partner, whether they're youth, in order to figure out what it really takes to address this issue that we all know is quite pressing.
And of course, one thing that was a big announcement this week was that Toledo City Council did vote to partners with Cities United, that outside organization, to kind of help address some of these issues with gun violence. And one thing Mayor Kapszukiewicz described this as was linking together Toledo's ecosystems. So all of those different partners in the community, so to tap into those resources that we kind of already have. So is that something that's going to be tied to your role?
Absolutely. It's a critical part of my role. Cities United is an excellent partner. They have a long history of doing this work, developing these ecosystems in Louisville and beyond, right? So they are not the implementing partner. They are the partner that comes in and provides technical assistance to get us all working together, and also has insight into best practices, whether it's a hospital-based intervention, whether it's a community-based intervention, whether it's street outreach, whatever those things look like. They've seen it from everywhere, from Baton Rouge to Louisville to Baltimore, right? So they have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and they also have kind of a collection of resources and tools that are going to be really helpful for us as we create Toledo's version of this safety plan.
And one of the partners that you mentioned there was health systems, and you have an experience in working with health systems locally. So kind of what does that public health expertise kind of bring to this role?
With health systems, we know those that are shot typically end up inside of a hospital, right? One thing that's been proven across the country, and we would like to eventually see here in some capacity, is something called hospital-based violence intervention, right? So when those folks are coming in, they're at their most vulnerable, they're at their most risk, or most at risk, and also their families are connected, right? They're coming in to see the person that's been injured. So how do you best align resources? How do you have the appropriate program or project that operates within a hospital in order to intervene at the most critical period? Because we know that those that are victims, often the likelihood, that's the perspective that I think I bring. As far as public health, my focus when I was at ProMedica was on the social determinants, right? So where you live, where you play, what you have access to, whether those are jobs, access to healthy food, education, things like that, really have a critical role in shaping health and well-being, right? So how do we look at this issue of gun violence victimization or perpetration through that lens as well, right? How do we ensure that they have the right resources? How do we have supports for them to move from one place to another? Is it mental health? Is it substance use? Is it housing? Is it education? What are those resources that are critical? So those are the two things that I would say I bring from my health and community health experience.
And of course, the mayor just announced this office last week. So what were some of the things that you're starting to target right now in terms of addressing gun violence and some of those other public safety issues we may be dealing with?
Yeah, great. That's a really great question. So of course, we need to figure out during a school year is going to look different during the summer, because we know, many youth are out of school for the most part, but also we know that violence across the world tends to go up during the warmer months, right? So right now, what we've been working on is developing a plan for the summer. So that includes, what does a weekly review look like with R, so that we can understand where the hot spots are, where those most at-risk areas are, and get the appropriate resources to those places, right? How can we also be preventative? How can we go further upstream and create safe spaces for neighborhoods to join together to convene? So been really focused on the summer plan right now, should be ready to roll in probably another week or so for public consumption, but feeling pretty good about the direction of that. We also applied for a grant last Thursday that we're hopeful for. It would help us provide capacity building and resources for that ecosystem that we were talking about, so that we're all doing evidence-based practices, but the different unique ways that we intervene. So those are the two things. I've also been working on developing an action table, which is that convening body, that coalition, that working group of folks that are coming from all those different places. They're the grassroots folks, they're the community police officers, they're the school systems, they're, again, that entire network, so that we can start working on issues and thinking about things in the same way. So it's been in those areas. There are a million other things that have occurred. I finally got my badge yesterday, so excited to, be able to actually go in and out of the building, right? But yeah, it's focusing on those things. And then, the other thing is we also received funding for a school-based intervention, right? So there's hospital-based violence interventions, there's community-based violence interventions, and there's emerging practice around school-based interventions. So how do we bring Save Our Communities into TPS, into some of the other schools where there's some level of risk for community violence? So we've been working closely with folks at TPS, and of course with the Save Our Communities team in order to figure out how to really implement that the appropriate way. So those have been the buckets of work.
And I was just going to mention, that Save Our Community program expansion is definitely going to be an interesting part of this, because we do oftentimes hear about getting that connection with people and kids where they're at, the schools. So it definitely is going to be telling what changes we may see in this summer with regard to a lot of these violence trends. Malcom Cunningham, Director of the new Mayor's Office of Safety and Neighborhood Engagement, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. And that's this week's Community Focus. Have a great rest of your weekend.